The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
And hello there, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Whitfield Report. I'm your host, Sam Whitfield, recording here at NGC Studios for the Monday edition of the show. It's been a while since we've had a Monday show, not since before the hurricanes in Florida. But anyway, I am back, and joining me for this episode is Jake Widmer, who is a fellow independent author. I know that's kind of a shocker, considering that every Monday we have authors on the show almost, with the exception of a few guests who aren't authors. But anyway, Jake's a pretty, he's written some pretty great pulp thrillers, and so I wanted to have him on just to kind of talk about his work and what he's doing in the, thriller space, along with, some of his influences and whatnot. And we've talked a lot in the Men's Adventure Fiction Discord, and really great community over there. So, Jake, welcome to the Whitfield Report. I hope you're doing well, man. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm excited to get down and talk with you. A little bit nervous, my first podcast, but we'll roll with it.
Well, we're not doing Joe Rogan numbers, so, that's, I don't think there's anything to be too worried about, but, who knows? This could be one of the ones that goes viral. So, yep. Anyway, though, so how'd you get started with, writing and just in general? What were kind of your influences, kind of motivating you to get into this genre?
So I was always writing small short stories all throughout, like, middle school and high school, but I didn't really start getting down into it until me and my friends joined our video production program, and we started writing our own short films outside of what the class wanted us to do. So I did do some screenplays, but those are horrible. I know there's a format to them, and they do not follow any of the formats. But that started it, and then also I had a great creative writing teacher in high school, and he practically let us do whatever we wanted as long as we don't drop any F-bombs or so much violence in the stories. That helped me out too. But I didn't start writing like the Chris Foley stuff until closer to the COVID pandemic, and also during it, because with my parents' jobs, I was home alone pretty much a lot, so I had nothing else to do. I had finished college by that point, and I would just start writing out ideas, and then Homecoming, my first book, came out of that mess. So I don't want to say I was just bored, but yeah, it just came out of something to do, and I fell in love with it. So.
Well, that kind of seems to be like a reoccurring theme of, like, a lot of the authors I've interviewed on the show, they start writing early, and then a lot of, like, at least in my experience, like, I did a lot of creative writing in high school too, and my series, while I wasn't well, I wasn't really like published until just a few years ago. I've been writing for probably like 20 years at that point, so that seems to be, um, you know, a kind of like a reoccurring theme I've noticed with a lot of authors in this space.
Yeah, and,
So,
and, and that might sound like cliche because a lot of the even some like Ryan Steck talks about how his writing class in high school brought that up, but it's true. It's what I just started doing it through then, and then it came out of boredom. So yeah,
yeah. No, it's funny that you mentioned Ryan because like I've known Ryan Steck, I mean not super well, but I've known him via Facebook for probably at this point a decade. Because when I first knew him, he wasn't even the real book spy yet. He was just the Vince Flynn fans. He ran kind of the fan site, and just to watch him go from just like an encyclopedia of the Mitch Rapp universe to now being like his own. He's got like two or three books out is pretty incredible.
yep.
But you know, Chris Foley, tell me a little bit about that series and how you came up with that concept because I think it's really unique and interesting.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. First of all, I appreciate that. But I wanted to, because before Chris Foley, I had written a lot of what I think's bad stuff. That I was hooked on like zombies for the longest time. So like my older computer's just filled with horrible zombie stories. But when I got my job working in a bookstore, I was put in charge of thriller and then later horror in those two sections. And I've been nice. I read a bunch of the new thriller stuff, so like Jack Carr, Brad Thor, Brad Taylor, Ace Atkins, and then Ryan Steck. And I was reading this like I want to try this out, but I also wanted to set it in my hometown of Pittsburgh, because as far as I know, there's not a lot of the tactical thrillers or political thriller stuff in Pittsburgh at all. Like nobody really thinks about that. The closest thing that comes to mind is the first Jack Reacher movie, and I think it is meant to take place in Pittsburgh. I don't think Pittsburgh is used as the city, but anyway, I sat down, went through a bunch of different versions until Chris Foley became who he is now. I wanted to make him like the standard the standard thriller trope everybody does it. The military man comes home and then something bad happens, but I didn't want it to be a former SEAL, former Green Beret, which nothing wrong with those guys. That's great. I just wanted him to stand out a little bit more. So I picked the Army's 10th Mountain Division. I looked into them. Those guys are total badasses. Um, and I also wanted to make them a lot younger too, because a lot of the guys in the thriller pantheon of heroes are a little bit on the older side. But so that's why Chris is still in his 20s, even in the third book going on now. He's still in his 20s. I think that's just a different. I think it's interesting at least to have a younger protagonist do all these things. It also adds a little bit of shock value too when he gets into like the nitty gritty stuff, like in my third book, The Real Monster.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because like I first started writing like the outline for it wasn't even called Shadows of Deception back then. It was something else, and I was in my early 20s. I was still in college when I wrote that, and I had my main character John Ryder like he was just like I think he was like 20. I think he was like 28 at the time. So he was actually older than I even was at the time when I created him. But like even like I was told that like even like 31, for like a Navy SEAL commander is like really that's really young. But like I didn't really care because I was like, well, maybe he's just that good that he advanced at such like a young age and then had all this stuff happen to him. But
Yeah, and that's go ahead.
no, go ahead. But
Like that whole thing about your character being like that good. That's what I'm kind of because I'm leaving breadcrumbs throughout my series. Like if you've read it, that like yes, Chris Foley was 10th Mountain, but there's something I'm not gonna say what it is because it's spoiling it. But he did more stuff over in Afghanistan that wasn't in 10th Mountain, and even though in the third book now, I think I have him as 24. He's just he has no business being as good as he is at that age, almost. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is like, so I don't know if you've run it into this, but like, I'm kind of like, I don't know, like I picture writing like the John Ryder character for like a long time, like as much as I can, and I don't want to. I don't want to do the thing of like having my, of having him or any of my other characters be like perpetually like 30 years old or something when I'm like 50. I understand that like some, authors can get away with that, but like
Mhm.
my whole goal hopefully is, barring like nothing happens to me, that like I can keep writing this,
Yeah,
series into like my 50s, and like have John Ryder like you know like turn in his 50s, and like still going
yeah,
on adventures then.
yeah. Like
So
that. That's what I would like to hope. Like same thing as long as anything that doesn't happen. I want to as I get older and the more experience I get, Chris is going to get older and the more experience he's going to get. So as long as I keep writing Chris Foley, he's going to age along with me and everybody reading him too. So I'm on the same page with you on that one.
yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned working at like a bookstore. So like I haven't I've worked at somebody's, but not like a bookstore. So like it's interesting that you mentioned like you're in charge of like the thriller, you know, section and whatnot. So do you think that's like one of your like that's why you write in the genre that you do, just because you're around it a lot of the time, or um, did
Yeah,
you
I
always
would.
gravitate towards that genre?
I've always kind of moved towards thriller and horror because they're fun genres to read. Like even the Tom Clancy ones that are like tomes, like this thick books, they're fun to read. Same thing with like the big horror books too, and also like all the movies I've watched growing up were like Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Terminator, movies that I was way too young to have seen when I first saw them, and then grew up with all the Call of Duty games too. So like that military thriller is like embedded into me. So I'm not
Yeah,
surprised that Chris Foley is the action thriller that it is because of those influences.
yeah. It's funny. It's funny that you mentioned Call of Duty too, because we're recording this on the weekend that Black Ops 6 has launched, and
Hmm.
I haven't had a chance to play it yet. I've heard from other friends that it's pretty good, but man, it's like it's a $70 price tag, and I need more people to buy more of my books
Yeah,
so I can afford to
yeah. Read
to
our
buy.
stuff. It's like Call of Duty. Read it. It's just like it. But
Yeah.
funny you
So
bring Black Ops up. I opened my phone up this morning to I forget what, I think it was either Instagram or Twitter, and it just spoilers for the whole campaign. I'm like, I can't go on anything now. I can't.
yeah, no, in Black Ops is one of the few. Well, I mean, is Black Ops is like one of the few games where like they actually have like, minus like Black Ops 3 and 4. Like I know those campaigns were like kind of sus, but like Black Ops actually, like as far as the Call of Duty games, like more or less kind of has like an actual like good campaign. So um
Black Ops One campaign lives rent free in my head, man. I think.
oh oh yeah, well Black Ops 1, like like I know Black Ops 1 takes place in the 60s, but like there are definitely Easter eggs to like the Black Ops 1 you know campaign, that like I've left like references
Yeah,
to that, and so people are like, oh, you did the numbers thing here, and like and other stuff
yeah,
like that,
yeah,
and I'm like, well, yeah, so why wouldn't I?
yeah.
So
And I kind of spread a little bit of like, because the fact that Chris Foley and his friends, his former 10th Mountain teams, are still so young. There's always I always like to have like glimpses of the like the inner kid in them comes out and beats the cold hardened killer that they are, and it's always something like okay, I'll see you tonight. You better hop on the game. I'm gonna kick your ass. And after something horrible just happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Black Ops 6, man. If it goes on sale, I'll get it, but I'm not dropping $70 for it right now. Absolutely not.
I'm probably the thing with that, and this is kind of advice for, some of the gaming audience, which I do know we have. Like I always wait until like all of the Black Friday sales.
Yeah.
So um you know, or I mean like there's only I think there have only been like two games where I've like ever paid the full, like $70 for, and they're almost never worth it now
Yeah.
because of like the day
Game coming
one,
out. Like,
yeah.
you gotta
So
buy a DLC to get the whole thing fixed out. Yeah, but you won't experience out of our books, guys. We don't have to get DLC for ours.
yeah, well that's also like I had like my first like I'm old moment when I had to like explain to like one of my neighbor's kids who's like younger, like, yeah, no, when I was a kid, like, you know like games just like they came out, and like if they were good, if they were,
Yeah, if they were
if they
good,
ran well, like that was it. And if they didn't, developers were like in a load of, shit then.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Now it's like I pay $70, I get a game that barely works, and then I have to buy like a $20 DLC to get it to work. Like, thanks, dude.
that's well that's like I still game a little bit, but like honestly too, like that's one of the reasons like why I started like writing because a lot more again was because I was like, well, shoot, like all these games are like broken first off, and then like the storylines like aren't that good. Like, man, like I've written some, short stories like I've that could be just as good. So like that was part of my impetus was, just like seeing if I could write like better than some of the developers, and lo and behold, it's not that hard.
No, it's
So
not. It's not that
actually,
hard. It's not that hard. I'm a 24-year-old kid, and I think some of the dialogue I have in my stuff is better than anything a AAA developer could put out.
yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, same with movies too. Like the last James Bond movie, like I like it, but like the ending, like really a lot. Along with like a lot of other people, like I'm kind of sour by the fact that like that they actually like killed Bond off, and
Yeah,
I know that like Craig's thing was like kind of its own universe, but still it's kind of like yeah, that's not like the point of Bond,
yeah, yeah,
like the whole thing is like yeah, it's different actors, but like up until that point, like the idea was that it was the same character throughout like all of the films. So
yeah, yeah.
um, but
Yeah, I still don't like that ending. Like, I don't mind the movie at all. It has some great action sequences, some great Bond moments. But when I first saw that ending, I was like, oh, they actually did it. Like, I don't like it. I don't like the ending of that movie.
yeah, that was one of the reasons why the original director like stepped down. Like I guess they were gonna have like a different director, and he said nope. And that was like the big rumor was that they were gonna kill off Bond. And at first I was like, nah. I'm like, nah, this is just a publicity stunt. They're not gonna do it. And it's like, oh wow, they did
Yeah,
it. So
and a part of me thinks the reason why they showed like Bond getting blown up was because if they didn't, there'd be people like, oh, he got off the island. Oh, Daniel Craig's coming back. They just wanted to like make it blatantly clear that Daniel Craig's done, but they could have done it in such a better way, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, there were like a bunch of ways they could have ended it, but like I've done entire podcasts on that before.
Yeah.
Um, I'm one of those guys that can talk about Bond 4 hours. Well, the other thing too that I find interesting about your work is like you've become like you're kind of the expert, at least, in our circle of like the executioner and like all these other like pulp anti heroes.
I wouldn't say expert. I love the Mac Bolan books. I think they're great. There's a lot more good ones than there are bad ones, because there are some bad ones. But like whenever you get a good one,
Yeah,
especially the ones from the '80s, which were the ones ghost written by Stephen Mertz, you're gonna have a blast with those. Like the one I'm reading right now, I think it's book 52 or 53, Tuscany Terror. Stephen Mertz wrote that one. It is fantastic. In an Able Team in Phoenix Force too. Not so big on Phoenix Force, but Able Team rocks. It's like that. It's stuff like that that made me want to get into writing, just because it's fun. There's a story. It doesn't get too deep into everything. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean that's like reading some of those older like pulp like action novels has been like really influential like in my writing too, because it's like okay, you don't need like a 500-page tome to like tell a good story. Like they can kind of be on the shorter side, and I almost hate to say it, but like I think kind of the shorter format actually works now more too, because like when I was first writing like my when I was first writing like the first Shadows of Deception, just like writing like I remember like I barely told like anyone I was doing it at all, but like I told a few close friends who I
Mm-hmm.
who I had who I had gone to school with, and one of my friends was like that. Well, that's great that you're writing it, but like I might not like. I'll buy a copy to support you, but I might not actually read it. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, like, I have a full-time job, and if it's,
Yeah.
if it's 500 pages, like, I just won't have time to, you know, read it. And I'm like, well, what if it was like around 250 pages? And he's like, oh, well, well, then yeah, if I could finish it in like a weekend, I would do that. So like, that's kind of like been, you know, I guess instructional for me as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I totally I feel that too. Like I've told like my friends when I was first getting ready to publish Homecoming, they were like, "Oh, that's great, but I'll buy it." But it's the same thing you said. And then when I told them how, because I don't think my stuff's long. I think the longest one that I have is my third one, and that's almost like I think it's either like 290 or almost three. But I feel like that one needed to be longer. But when I told them like how big Homecoming was and how big Killing Evil was, they were just like, "Oh, yeah, it's not a Game of Thrones book."
yeah, well, yeah, it's funny. Well, and it's funny that you mentioned Game of Thrones because like I tried to like read. I tried, or no, I tried to listen to the first like audiobook in the Game of Thrones series, and I made it like 3 hours in, and I was just like I can't. And that's like a 40. That's like a the audiobook is like 42 hours or something. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I
insane.
cheated. I cheated. I read the graphic novel adaptations of the books.
Well, I mean, hey, you've read more than I did of
It was just the first one because like it took it, they're like it's like every 2 years they release. And like, well, I'm not waiting for that. But they were pretty good.
yeah, I mean, I imagine though like even for graphic novels they're still like pretty long though.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
yeah, if they're adapting like the book, yeah, so
The
I
artwork
mean,
I like though. It's pretty good. It's George R. R. Martin's vision, so like some of the stuff looks different. The throne is like the book accurate throne where it's like touching the ceiling. It's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. So I yeah, I mean I did I actually like I actually read the boys graphic novel too that like the show is based on, and like
Hmm.
and people think that the show is like gory and gratuitous, and I'm like nope, not at all. If
Oh,
anything, if anything, the show is toned down
yeah.
compared to like what's in the book.
Yeah, the
So
books are like you can't open those up without seeing something horrible happening to somebody one way or another.
yeah, or just like some like weirdly like explicit like sex
Yeah,
scene
yeah,
or something.
yeah, I
So,
get you.
but but yeah. So I mean, as far as like what, so are you mainly just working on like the Chris Foley books right now, or are there any other projects like in the works, or
There's a
um
couple ones that I'm thinking about doing, but those are like an early, I would say, pre-production. What I'm working on right now, and I've talked about it in the Men's Adventure Discord, is something called the Folly Files. I don't know if that's what I'm going to call it. It's just a working title. But it's going to be a collection of short stories set in the Chris Foley universe. Some of them take place right after the real monster. Other ones are in between the books, and other ones are prequel short stories to it. I'm really, really excited about it. Some of my friends that have heard some of the stories I have done, they've loved it. Some of them are in the Men's Adventure Discord. They're the long ass ones for the submissions because I didn't follow the page count. But um,
yeah,
yeah, I'm as you say, laughs and novella. I'm having a blast with it. Chris Foley 5 is also being written at the same time, and I'm kind of having some trouble because I'm leaving breadcrumbs in some of the short stories for what's going to happen there, and I'm like, oh shit, I got to go back and retcon myself after all that. But yeah, but Chris Foley's my focus right now because I have all these ideas lined up. I don't want to like start something else and then go back to write Chris Foley and totally forget how to write the character.
yeah, yeah. That happens a lot too. I have like I have like three works in progress in like the Shadows of Deception saga, and then I just really, well, I haven't released it yet. Although by the time some people hear this, it might be out. But like I've also got like the Blood Ties,
Yes.
short story series, which is my Mafia series, and that's like interesting because like those are characters that like I've kind of had like in the background for years. They're not like tied into the Shadows of Deception universe. It's its own thing, but like those are kind of the characters that I've used for like a lot of the short story prompts in the men's adventure fiction Discord. And
Yeah.
um, what's interesting about that is like my my short story uh series, like once I put them all together in a book, which I've done, like the short story volume that I just put together is actually longer than some novellas I've
Yeah.
done just as far as page count, which I think is wild. So, but
Yeah. One thing I am focusing on for the Folly Files is there's gonna be like some like I wouldn't say like main attraction to it, but there's gonna be some bigger ones in there. But like the first three that I have lined up are maybe like 16, 20 pages tops, but the fourth one is meant to like build a little bit more of the world, so that's a little bit longer. So they're not all going to be the same length in it, but
yeah,
expect the same kind of action that you like from my other stuff. It's going to be Chris. There's going to be stories from Chris's point of view, stories from other characters' POVs, other characters who don't get their time in the spotlight. I'm really excited for it.
yeah. Well, I mean, and I mean, I think the other thing too, I've read as many of your books. I did read Homecoming, and it was really good. But
Oh, good. I didn't know
like
you.
I'm, but I mean, like right now, like I'm also experimenting with like, some of my characters are like older, spies like from the Cold War now.
Mhm.
So like I right now what I'm doing is I'm also working on like a short story that like actually takes place like in the early 1980s that like shows
Mhm.
like like John Ryder's boss when he was like a younger
Yeah.
man and like,
Yeah.
and like and that's kind of a challenge in and of itself because it's kind of like, well, oh, it's kind of like, well, oh shoot, this historical event hadn't happened yet, and like I obviously can't like reference like cell phones or like
Yeah.
anything like that,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and like
I thought.
I can kind of reference the internet, but like not really because it was like a super like like
So like
prehistoric
the
like
whole floor back then, like the whole basement's the computer room.
yeah. Yeah, and then like,
Yeah.
using computers, it was just like you had to type in a command to like, like pull up
Yeah.
a window and like that's what
Yeah.
it
I don't
was.
know how I would write something set back then because I probably could, but it would take a lot longer. But good on you for trying that, man. I can't like that sounds hard as hell.
I mean it definitely has it definitely has its challenges. Like I've actually reached out to like some other authors kind of like in our extended circle who one of whom is I don't know if you know who Steve Stratton is, but like he's a thrill
Yeah, yeah,
author,
yeah.
and he was actually in the Secret Service when Reagan was president. So like I've like
You
asked him a few
you hit
times
gold
like
on that one.
yeah. Well, and he
Yeah.
was great because he offered too like when I had him on the show earlier this year. I'm like, once we got off air, I'm like, hey, like I'm thinking of writing like a Cold War thriller. He's like, let me know if you need anything. He's like, I can't answer any. He's like, I can't answer any questions like Nixon, but I'm definitely good for like Reagan. So,
Yeah. Nice.
which it was.
Can I go off topic really quick?
Oh yeah, yeah, certainly.
You bring
So
that up about how Steve Strand was just willing to help you out right away. That's something that I love about not just the Discord, but like the author community in general. Like before I got into it, I thought like nobody was gonna help me out. But there's so many great people in this community, like LS Goodsich. Without his support, Homecoming wouldn't have been a thing. He was the first one to reach out to me when I first posted on my Instagram, and his support got me going. Zach James, who he's helped me out a whole lot.
oh
So
yeah,
yeah, both of them did blurbs for Homecoming, Killing Evil, and then Luke did my third one. But like, if anybody's out there trying to get into this community, like, don't be afraid to reach out. I've had no bad experiences at all reaching out to people at all. I don't know about
it's
you at least, but I've had no bad experiences.
I mean I will say it has changed a lot because like when I first started kind of the when I first started in the author community, it was like around 2014, and I was
Mhm.
kind of like I was still kind of dabbling, in writing then. Like it was kind of like I took a gap year in between high school and college, and that was the year I did that. And like back then, like I indie authors were still kind of like um there was still kind of like a phase of like, oh, he's just an indie author. He's not like an actual, author. And I think that stigma is kind of gone now, definitely like which has
And
definitely
and
helped.
it definitely is. It's like the one thing that does need to. I'm gonna try not to go on a rant here.
No,
You know
no.
my opinion. You know my
Yeah.
opinion on probably where I'm going on with this. Um, like the stigma that it's like, oh, he's like, we're not selling books out of the trunk of our cars anymore. Like we have Amazon's opportunity. We have, if you want to try it, Barnes and Noble Press. I couldn't get it to figure that out, but best of luck to you if you want to try that one out. There's Ingram. There's a whole bunch of other ones. But what needs to, I think, change is in store availability from some major retailers too, because
Yeah.
good on a lot of people. I'm not gonna. We've talked about these authors before, but I'm not gonna say anything. Good on them for getting into a store, but I'm flipping through some of these books and this woman's a millionaire, but her human interactions in her books aren't real human interactions at all. But I'm just leaving it at that. But I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah.
some retailers need to start accepting indie authors in, because I can't tell you the amount of times, like very recently too, like within like the last week, where like most of the customers that come up to me want books that we can't even order for them because they're indie authors, but they're so popular on Amazon, and it's annoying. It really is annoying.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the other thing too that like in this, I'm sure you've heard this and you've experienced this too, but like one of my biggest pet peeves is like with pre-orders, like for some reason on Amazon, like you can only do pre-orders for the Kindle edition, but
Yeah,
there's no way to do pre-orders for like print, uh editions. And I
yeah,
don't really know why that is, because it just seems like, well, you're essentially just reserving a copy, right? And then it's print on demand, so they'll print it, anyway.
yeah.
Um,
I don't
but
understand
like,
that. It's if it works for the ebook, it should work for our physical copies. I don't want to. I don't know what Amazon's thinking about that. But if they were allowed
yeah,
us to do like pre-orders for our paperbacks, I think that would help us out a lot more.
it definitely would, for sure. So, I think my other, like one of my other pet peeves, while we're talking about, pet peeves,
Hmm.
kind of is, specifically like in the thriller genre, like I do feel like some of the major authors get away with like unrealistic things that the indie author community would get like,
Yep.
major flack for,
Yeah.
this whole idea of like AI supercomputers, like helping out, you know,
Yeah.
major,
Yeah.
maybe that was a bit too specific of a reference, but like that's one thing where like I've done that, and where like I've done that in my books, and I get like, like a
Yeah.
3-star review, and I'm like, well, I'm just copying, you know, I'm just like, well, X amount X, author, so and so can do that.
Yeah.
So
I have a good example revolving around the same guy we're talking about actually. So in my third book that I'm going to try to say this without spoiling it. Chris Foley is tortured in one scene for it, and a lot of people, this is not a lot of people, one person on Facebook reached out and was commented saying like how I basically copied one scene from the third book from this gentleman we're talking about. And if you know the torture scene in that third book, I think you know what I'm going with. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah,
Yeah, that it's the same part on Chris, but it's also like totally different. And I'm just like, dude, if it was reversed and I went that extreme, I would be ripped apart. I feel like like make up your minds.
yeah. Well, I mean, and the other thing too with that author, is like, like I think I'm decent at like writing, fight scenes and like battle scenes, but like
Mhm.
I'm definitely not like the type of person that goes in depth, like, and then John Ryder, loaded in like a 20 round, magazine into his
Yeah,
MP5 Heckler
but
and
you forgot
Coke,
to
and
put in what
then
kind of bullet it was too. You forgot to say how fast it is as well as it goes
yeah,
through. You forgot
yeah.
that. You forgot to mention what coffee Ryder drank that morning too. You forgot that.
Uh,
I
oh
just want to say
yeah,
something.
well,
If, if you know who we're talking about, I like his stuff, but the last two, I was not a fan. I'll just say it right
Yeah,
out.
well, I mean, we could pretty much say you and I are both big Jack Carr fans, and I know people who have interviewed, Jack Carr, and listen, you know, I've tried to get Jack Carr on the show. I would love to interview him. Other people have
Mhm.
said that I should interview him, so I'd be honored.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do feel like some of his a common criticism that I've heard online is the fact that he does get a little too wordy, and with some of his scenes, and I definitely think that is a thing, not just with him. I think with other authors as well. So
Yeah, it's
um,
definitely like a trend going around of like all the heavy hitters, like Carr, Thor, all those people. Like getting a little wordy might be becoming a thing. I don't know if they're trying to like be more like Clancy, which nobody's gonna be more like Clancy. Like, I'm sorry to tell you that but no one's gonna top him. But
yeah,
yeah, I think it's just the thing now. Like everything's getting a little bit like tomish almost. But like you said, I
well,
think the short stories are going to become more popular again.
I think from what I've heard, um, one of the reasons why books are why some of those books are still long now is also publisher requirements too. I think for what reason the big publishers have hey, we need you to write
Yeah,
a certain amount of you know words because X amount of words sells better for us. So
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all, and that just gives authors like us a little bit more freedom because like I'm sure if you really wanted to, Shadows of Deceptions could have been like a big tome ish book, but like you wanted to make it a short novella, and you had the freedom to do that. I think that's one thing that indie authors have over a lot of the traditional publishers because we have absolute freedom to do whatever we want.
yeah, I mean, so it's interesting that you say that because one of the things I'm doing right now, and I mean, I've already announced on the show, so I'm not giving anything away, but right now I'm working on compiling the existing novellas into in basically one book
Mhm.
that I'll just and I'll still sell the individual novellas for sale on paperback, but what I'm gonna do is because because people have been wanting a hardcover edition of some of the books, and I'm well, rather than doing a hardcover for each individual book, which could get expensive, what I'll probably what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna compile the first three novellas into one hardcover book and just sell that as its own thing.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds awesome, man.
so because
Yeah, I thought
because
about.
the because one of the ideas that I have for Shadows of Deception is that you can't is that if you really want you can read the series like one after the other kind of like a big novel if you want to. So,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, I mean that's why I bought all three, like because I was gonna like trot them out. I haven't. I'll be honest. I'm sorry. I haven't started it yet. I'm actually gonna start that tomorrow because I'm gonna finish the Executioner I'm on tonight. That's next on my list. I'm excited to start it, but I'm sorry I haven't started it yet.
that's fine. I actually so I've had Zach James on twice to promote Persona non grata. The first time I had him on the first time I had him on was just I hadn't read you know
Mhm.
he hadn't sent me a copy yet, but then the second time was launch week of Persona non grata, and I'm dude, I still haven't finished. I've started Persona non grata, but I haven't finished it yet. And that
Mhm.
book is that book is longer than I thought it would be, which isn't necessarily like a bad thing, but like
No, it's not.
I'm like, oh, I'm
Whenever I
like,
got my arc in the mail, whenever I didn't even know Zach was sending it to me. I came home like, what the hell did he send me? Because I'm used to like the modern mercenaries being like standard trade size, and then occupant being the small mass market thing. And I open up I'm like,
yeah,
holy
yeah,
shit,
yeah,
Zach!
yeah. Yeah, he sent me like Persona non Grata, and I'm like, holy cow, this thing is like the size of like a Bible or something like that. And
Yeah,
I can see why it took him 10 years to write to write,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. But it was great.
to write
Like
it.
he knocked it
So,
out of the park.
yeah. So there are one or two things that like I might change, but like they're more like they're not like they're more like just like personal preferences and not real like critique. So
Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
so um but anyway, um other than that, you mentioned also that like you used to like write screenplays. Is that something that you're still interested in the future
a
maybe,
little bit.
or
Yeah. So a little bit, not so much as in like the writing the screenplays now. Me and those same guys are we're still like those are my boys. One of them is Mark. One of them is the inspiration for my character Skip, who's one of Chris's former teammates, and he earned that because Skip's a badass and Mark's a badass. But we're all still hanging out, planning stuff. We finished filming a short film like late last fall, I would say, or early. I forget when it was, but like that's almost done from what I've heard. I wrote it. I did the same thing I did in high school. I just wrote out what I assumed would be a screenplay, and then I sent it over to them. And these guys went to school for this. It's the big joke. Like, well, I went to film school, so send it to me. So, and they're reading like they liked it, but then they changed it enough to be usable for film stuff. And so I am getting the writer, one of the story creator creds on that. I'm also in the short film. I'm not going to say too much about it because I don't know what they want me to say or what they don't want me to say. But it's not so much screenplay anymore. I'm just there for the ride because I didn't go to school with these guys. I don't have any of my own camera equipment. I'm just happy to be there.
yeah, well that's still pretty cool, though that you've, written something that like others are, using.
Yeah,
So,
I'm excited, and
um
we are planning on doing book trailers for my Chris Foley books, and like the style of like not the book trailers out now where they're like 10 seconds long. We want to do it like almost like a major motion picture trailer for the books, and who knows what comes after that. Maybe Chris Foley might get a web series. Who knows?
yeah, I mean, the possibilities are endless. So,
Yeah,
it's definitely an exciting time for indie, creators basically. I mean, just like even doing like audio, like I'm working right now on like also doing like an audio drama adaptation of like one of the Cold War like era Shadows of Deception
nice.
books, which I haven't even written that one yet, but like
Yeah,
there are just like so many different avenues of like things where we can go, and I really do think that like independent media is like really kind of starting to take back over, which is
yeah.
good. So,
Yeah, and you're
um,
100% right. It is a very exciting time, not just for like indie artists, but indie everybody now. I think everybody's
yeah,
finally not wanting to go the traditional route, spending all this money on something that might not ever come to light, where you can just we have the tools at our disposal to do it ourselves. That's why I went because when I was originally writing it, some of my family were like, "Oh, you need to contact this publisher." I'm like, "Yeah, but that I don't have the money for the agent. I don't have this. I don't have that. Let me just slam this thing through an editing software. Let me do it myself. Let me read it to some of my friends who I bribe them in beer and food to come over and listen to me read to the stuff. And if they like it, I like it, just put it out. It's like we don't have to go down that long, painful road of being told no, no, no. And you can just, if you know it's good, just put it out.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is so my grandfather, who has since passed, he was in human resources for like a number of years, like going back to the 60s. Like he was in human resources for like Time Warner. So, he was like pretty high up, and he actually wrote like a couple of like business books like in the 80s that got like, some traction back then. So he was so like he's been through the traditional publishing route, and like he was always kind of like pushing me to write when I was a kid, and like really kind of like, encouraging me to like go down the avenue. But once like Amazon, like I think at the time it was like Create Space was like a thing. He was like Sam, just do this. Like it's like he's like if I had just had this when I was in the business world, rather than like having to go through like agents and all that headache, like
Mm-hmm.
it would have been like a lot easier. So,
Yeah, one
um,
thing I wish was easier was like I know you have told me multiple times that like Twitter is good to market stuff. We just talking earlier before we started recording Facebook. I wish stuff like Instagram's algorithm allowed us to publish our stuff more. I mean, you had a whole video about what Zach's going through right now, which it's bullshit. But I wish Instagram allowed us a little bit easier to like get our stuff out there to the right people though.
oh yeah, well that's like, well, the whole thing with that too is it's not just like it's not just with Zach, but like Instagram is weird, is just like weird because like they'll censor like they censored one of my like one of my posts on like the hurricane aftermath like in Florida, and they censored
Yeah,
it
you pulled it
because
out. I'm just like, are you kidding me?
they pulled it down because they were like they was like, we think that you're like involved in engagement farming, and I'm like what? I'm like, first off, what even is that? And it's like okay, isn't engagement kind of like the whole point of this,
Yeah,
app? Like
yeah.
if people like aren't engaging, like, then like, then like what's the point? And I guess like they looked it up, and they're like, oh, what they meant like bots and whatnot. And it's like it's like, hey, I don't know like how to like even do that. Like
Yeah,
to I'm not technically savvy enough to like buy bots, or anything like that to like, you know,
yeah.
to like inflate my account. So, um,
Yeah, yeah,
be like,
it's you getting slammed with that is ridiculous. What Zach's going through is ridiculous. I haven't like been like my page hasn't been like restricted. Nothing's been like taken off, but I know from like my family and friends because I have them whenever I was promoting my second book, Killing Evil, which without spoiling it has a lot to do with human trafficking in Pittsburgh, which it's a bad thing that actually goes on a lot
yeah,
around here. And I released it around the same time that Sound of Freedom came out. So, and in my descriptions, I was telling people like, if you're not into, if you don't believe this is real, if you don't think that these people should, because like our friend Zach James, I believe we should kill all pedophiles, and that essentially, I said that in my post, and it was just
based.
like shadow based, yeah,
Yeah.
just shadow banned. It's just like I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you telling me that I'm not supposed to like? Are you for this? And Instagram didn't even answer me.
Yeah, well, like, so like Instagram, like I've gotten a few things like I've gotten a few things like, like I guess like D ranked or whatever, but I've never gotten like outright shadow banned. Like,
Mhm.
but like YouTube, like I'm basically like persona non grata on YouTube. They actually like nukes my whole channel for the podcast. So, um, and I don't
Yeah,
they never even gave me a reason why. They were just like I was actually like live streaming like a week after my grandfather died. I was
yeah,
right in the middle of like you of actually like kind of you like you know paying tribute to him on the live stream, and all of a
yeah.
sudden like I got like a text like, "Hey, did your webcam freeze or something?" And I'm like, "No," and they're like, "Well, the stream's offline." And then I got like an email saying that like your channel has been terminated, and I'm like,
Oh my
"Okay,
god.
why?" And they're like terms of service violations, and I'm like, "Okay, which ones?" And they're like, "Please refer to our community."
Yeah,
And it's like, okay, that's not an answer. So,
that's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. But yeah, that sucks, man. It's a good time to be an indie developer, but it's also there's still some hassles that everything that needs to be taken care of. But slowly but surely, we'll get those taken care of.
yeah, yeah, it should be interesting. I you know, like I almost feel bad because like I am trying also to like be like really encouraging of like Nathaniel and Luke and what they're doing with the Men's Adventure Fiction podcast, but I'm like
Hmm.
I also have like warned them like also like okay, eventually you guys are gonna hit like a wall on YouTube and um and you're kind of gonna get stuck there. So because your content isn't necessarily like YouTube friendly per
Yeah,
se.
what it's not the content they want you to make. Yeah, but like
Yeah.
Discord's going strong, man. It's great. It's great, and I hope it never falls apart, which it never will because I don't think any of us are gonna let it.
I think also like our Discord is like small enough too where like if there's anyone who like comes in that like isn't like
Yeah,
that doesn't really pass
like
the
one way
smell
or
test.
another is causing problems. Just yeah, you get out.
Yeah. So that's always that's always good. So but
Yeah.
anyway like so where can people find your books and whatnot?
So it's all on Amazon under Jake Widmer. I am not the Jake Widmer who did the Mexican coloring book, and I am not the Jake Widmer who did How to Be a Better Husband Through Jesus. That's been mistaken somehow. I don't know how. I don't know how it's been mistaken before. I tell them, oh, it's an action thriller in Pittsburgh, and they bring me the Mexican coloring book. I'm like, that's not what I whatever. But it's all yeah, I know. It's all on there. You can read the series in any order that you want. I know somebody who's just reading The Real Monster and they're understanding it, but get them all if you want. Help me out. Buy Sam's books too while you're at it. Um,
Appreciate it.
but yeah, no problem, man. You're no problem, man. You're awesome. But yeah, it's all through Amazon. I do most of my updates through Instagram, which even though we were just talking smack on it, but it's at Jake Widmer author. I'm trying to be more productive on that, so just bear with me on that. But yeah, that's really all where I'm at right now. I tried to get into Barnes and Noble, it didn't work out, so I'm just sticking with Amazon.
Yeah, no, I tried like I did try with Barnes and Noble too because there was like someone who's like I have a $25 Barnes and Noble gift card that like I've never used and I would love to use it, so I'm like okay, well let me see if there's like a way I can publish like a Barnes and Noble edition of the book with like a different cover or something, and so I
Mhm.
tried, and it was like it was like the it was like the page margins whatever didn't get like they said that like my page margins were like off, and I'm like, what do you mean? It's just like a standard 5x8. Like it's the exact same one I used. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
So
I recently tried again with Barnes and Noble Press. Keep in mind, like Homecoming's already been out for almost 2 years now, and I put everything in. I had the markings in BN Press set up to how my Amazon ones were, so it would match my files and everything. You know what it is. And I plug it in. They just listed all these problems, right? And I'm looking at these problems. I'm like, well, I can't fix that. I don't know what you want me to do. So I'm just sticking with KDP. That's the way to go for me.
yeah, yeah, and then someone was like upset because because I like pre-published like Blood Ties, and it's like they were upset because like the hardcover is matte instead of like having a dust jacket, and it's like, well, and it's like, well, that's Amazon that like is in charge of that. Like it,
No.
like yeah, having a dust jacket would be cool, but
Yeah.
like that's not like, you know,
Yeah,
that's not like
we don't,
top priority.
we don't have a say in that. We don't have a say in that at all. I think to my knowledge at least, the only I think you can get them if you go through Ingram, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, in Ingram, like from what I've heard, is just like I've heard that like Ingram, like they have like enough quirks to where it's like not really like worth like they have their own quirks, and it's like yeah, just use Amazon because like the headaches of like using
Yeah,
Ingram are like
yeah,
not worth it. Plus like uh, like I know some people don't like Amazon for whatever reason. I don't really understand why, but like as far as like and I've talked to this before, but like Amazon or not, like they pay the best royalty rate for like independent authors out of
yeah.
out of all of the distributors that um looked at. So
Yeah, like exactly. I 100% agree with that. But like some people like this, I'm not gonna drop names, but this one guy reached out to me. He was like, "I'm curious, but like, how much do you get back from Amazon?" So I told him, and he was just like, "Whoa, that's ridiculous." I'm like, "Dude, it's in my opinion, one, it's better than nothing, and two, what you just said. Out of all the other options, they're giving us the most money from it. So like, look
yeah,
at your
well,
other
and then
options too. If you understand what I'm saying."
yeah, well, and then even like with traditional publishing, like we've talked at this on like the live show before too, but like Penguin Publishing, like they got in trouble like a few years ago. There was like a big lawsuit where like they were like they were like paying authors like pennies on the dollar for like what their books were like were actually like bringing in, simply because like they weren't like Stephen King or or like Patricia Cornwall, or like one of those like
Louise
mega
Penn or something. Yeah.
authors. Um so it's like yeah, why even go with with like a with like a traditional
Yeah, yeah.
publisher anymore?
Yeah, you're spending
So
all this money to get into that, and then like you just said, like, oh, you're not Stephen King. Here's a quarter for like a book that took you 3 years to write.
yeah, and like they won't even help you with like with PR either. So
No, that's on
um
you. Like all you see all these authors go into like BoucherCon, Thriller Fest, having these press cons to go into book signings. I'm pretty sure most of them set that up on their own because I wouldn't be. Something tells me that
oh,
like Penguin, whatever her name is, I don't know her
Emily
name, but I doubt they're
Bestler.
setting that. Yeah, I don't know if they're setting that up or not.
Well, well, like I know that some of them do, but like I know from talking to like I know that from talking to like Eric Bishop and like a lot of people who have done like it's interesting too because like a lot of people like Steve Stratton and like Eric Bishop, like they were both in traditional publishing and then they moved to indie. And one thing that
Hmm.
they both told me is that is that it's not like it was in in like the 90s where the publishing houses would like do PR. like now authors have to, like, even Jack Carr has to do like a lot of his own, like, indie, has to do like a lot of his own social media and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like, he gets some help from Simon and Schuster, but not that much. Which is kind of like, okay, well, that's kind of like, then that's kind of dumb. Like, why do the publishing houses even exist then? So
Exactly. A lot of it doesn't make any sense at all. Like you can go down a rabbit hole and go insane trying to figure out some of the stuff behind the politics of getting published, but that's a topic for another time.
and I mean, I have, and like we've talked, off air about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's funny to me too is, like, you mentioned, like, Luke Goddard, like, and someone like mentioned, like, did you find Luke because of like one of his Instagram ads? And I'm like, no, I found Luke because he liked one of like my pulp art, like, AI drawings on Instagram, like, back in February, and like we just started talking, and like I don't know why that specific post like went viral, but it did for whatever reason. So
like same thing. Like I didn't find Luke's, and like I don't even know if Frozen. I wasn't published yet. He might correct me on this. I don't even know if Frozen Wrath was even out yet. But he was definitely writing it and promoting it, I think. And Luke, if I'm wrong, let me know. But he had commented on my post, and then he started hanging out at the bookstore I work at, and then he got published, I got published, and then the rest was history.
That's wild that you two are in the same, like, area too. So
we haven't been able to hang out as much as like we used to because he's got kids, I've got my stuff going on, but yeah, he's a good guy, he's a close friend, and like I said in the times before, without his support, I wouldn't have been published. So.
You and him are like two of the reasons why I would like consider going to Pennsylvania. So
nice, man. Nathaniel's here too, so.
Yeah, well, Nathaniel, like, everyone thinks that he's kind of like a Florida man, and I thought he was a Florida man too for like the longest time, and
he told me where he was. I was like, "There's no way you're there. I don't believe you."
Yeah. So, yeah. So.
Talk about like Nathaniel though. That man needs to get published somehow. We gotta like put him in a room and make him fill out the KDP sheet, the KDP thing one day. Just don't let him leave until he does it.
Yeah, no. We just need to like. We just need to like be like, okay, well, like, we're gonna take care of your wife and daughter for the day. Like, they're gonna be fine.
They're gonna be fine.
You just need to like. You just need to like like fill out this KDP form. So
yeah, we already have the cover. It's already. Don't worry about it. Just hit this enter right here. Join the club.
Yeah. Well, like, that's the other thing is like they're like some people in the Discord who are like really good writers who I think should be published, but they're not, quite yet. So
like the writers section and the prompts. Like, I have a blast looking through those, and that sometimes like I don't even like the first time like I've read, I forget, I'm drawing a blank. It's not Sam. It wasn't Nathaniel. It wasn't Grayson. I forget his name. But I had a blast reading it, and I'm like, he hasn't even considered publishing yet. Get this man going on that.
I feel bad because like I actually did interview Grayson, but like for whatever reason the recording kind of got like botched, so I wasn't able. So we're gonna have to like re-record it. But like, yeah, his knowledge of like Sword and Stone like fiction is like really in depth. Like that that's like a genre that like I like really kind of like underestimated. I was kind of like okay, like it's fantasy. It's probably like Game of Thrones. Like I'm sure he's good at it, but like it's not real like it's not real like my genre. So,
Hmm.
but like reading some of his stuff, it's like really good. So
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm not a huge fantasy guy. The only like fantasy stuff that I read was like the Percy Jackson books growing up, Joe Abercrombie's, I think the Third Law, I think it was. But like because of the stuff Grayson's been putting into the chat in the Discord, I'm like I have a craving to start reading it again. So thanks, Grayson. You've making me spend
yeah.
more money on books I don't need.
Well, no, that's kind of the same thing with like when I first connected with Luke. Like I published like some pulp art of like one of my character who is kind of like a vigilante gunslinger character in the Shadows of Deception, and he's kind of like a side character for he's kind of like a side character in like the main Shadows of Deception book, and I think it was like Luke or someone else who we've since connected with in the Discord is kind of like, okay, so when is this guy's book coming out? And I was like, uh, I wasn't really planning on like writing a book for this character, but I guess I am now. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah, that's
like
kind of what I was. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the Folly Files. And you said you read Homecoming, right?
yeah
Okay, so one of my close friends, one of her favorite characters is Kyle Grant. Like,
yeah
forget Chris, she loves Kyle, and I know Kyle doesn't get a lot of spotlight in Homecoming, but like in Killing Evil is when he really starts going to work. So one of the short stories in the Folly Files is going to be strictly about Kyle because of people like there was one person demanding. I'm like, fine, and that's one of the favorite things I wrote. It's a fun one. It's definitely not as like dark and gritty as the rest of the Chris Foley ones, but it's a good ease into the other ones that you're going to be getting into.
yeah
So I'm excited for that one.
I like Luke and Nathaniel are kind of like the same way. Like they like John Ryder, but they really like they really like my character who I call like the vigilante. He's just called like
Mm-hmm.
the vigilante.
Yeah.
And like there's like one part in the Dogs of War where like the vigilante just beheads like this like cartel leader, and Nathaniel who's like one of the most like wholesome guys, like, dude, that beheading scene is like one of my favorite parts, and I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
I'm like that's okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and the
So
same thing. Like I sent him some like early stuff for Chris Foley 5, like the opening action sequence, and I was thinking, okay, this is gonna be because I hadn't joined the Discord fully yet, and Nathaniel and I just started talking, and I was like, this is gonna see. I'm treading water here. Dip my toes in this, and like there was a pretty nasty part, and he was like, dude, that was awesome, and I'm like, okay, he's cool.
yeah, no. What's even fun? What's kind of funny too is like I've actually like I think I don't know if it was like I don't think it was like Nathaniel's wife, but it was like I think it was someone else's wife in the Discord like likes a lot of my work, and I'm like my work is like pretty violent this time.
Yeah, yeah,
So and it's like
yeah.
and he's like no, my wife loves that. So um
Yeah,
it's
it's like whenever like my mom would say like, "Oh, so and so from my office really liked your second book," and she listed a specific, pretty nasty, violent part, and I'm just like, this woman is like the sweetest old lady I've ever met in my life, and she read my stuff. Are you kidding me?
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah. Sorry about the noise. My garage door is going off. I don't know if that changed.
no, I can't hear it at all. It's fine.
That's sick.
So,
That's sick. That's perfect.
but anyway, well, I mean, man, we've been talking for about like an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm good
Yeah.
to keep gabbing. But if you have anything else, like, just, you know.
Yeah, I'd appreciate any support anybody wants to get me. Like I said, I'm on Amazon, at Jake Widmer Author on Instagram. Go and support indie authors in general. There is good
Yeah.
stuff in traditional publishing, but there's some awesome stuff in the indie world too, like Sam's stuff, Luke's, like Ellis Goodis that we mentioned, Zach James, Eric Bishop, Steve Stratton. Go support those guys for a change.
Are you the one who I think you like tagged me in a post about like the pulp revival? I think that was you, or maybe it was someone.
I didn't make that image. It was either Grayson or somebody else
Oh,
that made that, and I asked if I could post it.
yeah. Whoever made that image and like included all of us in there is like that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Great.
So
It was a great picture. I love that. That's why I was like, I gotta
really,
post this.
yeah. I really appreciate you for tagging me, and I really appreciate whoever like made that like graphic and like combined like all of our books together. Like, man, that was great. So, but
I think it was
anyway,
great.
well,
I think it was.
yeah, man, he's great for doing that, and he's great for supporting. Like, everyone kind of in the community has been great so far.
Oh
So,
yeah, it's a great community.
and yeah. So now if we can just get the socials to like behave for us all, that would be great. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, well, Jake, I want to thank you for coming on, and folks, I want to thank you for tuning in, and be sure to tune in Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern on Rumble for our live show. We're only a few days away from the election, and this one is going to be a nail biter. So, and depending on who wins, I may or may not be in like a CIA black site
Likewise,
somewhere.
brother. I'll see you there.
It's somewhere. So anyway, though, we'll talk to down the road, and until then, God bless, God save this great nation, and God, freedom, legacy, in that order.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless, God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.